Well, hello everyone, and hang on to your hats because you're going to join us on a little bit of a time machine adventure. We're going back to Watches and Wonders because we're going to talk about a watch that we completely forgot to talk about. Tom, do you remember what we forgot to mention at the Lange Söhne presentation?
Yes, absolutely. I've been feeling guilty about it ever since. Yeah, so it's high time we talked about it.
This is indeed the Richard Lange minute repeater. Now, this isn't the first minute repeater Lange Söhne has ever made, but it's the first for the Richard Lange collection. Let me give you a little bit of a lowdown on the Richard Lange collection so you get a little bit of background on it. It was first created in 2006, which was 16 years after the revival of the Lange brand. It's named after the founder's son, Richard Lange, son of Ferdinand Adolf Lange. You might be wondering, why are they naming a watch collection after his son? His son inherited the business and actually did really well with it. He created 27 patents and was known for his observation watches, very highly accurate timekeepers that really gave and extended Lange's reputation. So this collection actually stands in the current Lange Söhne collection as the very special, the specialist of the most specialist pieces. Hence this particular one having a minute repeater. Why don't you give us some of the specs on it, Tom?
Yeah, so this is a limited watch, only 50 pieces, so there are some very exquisite things going on here. Blued steel hand, as you would expect from Lange, very nice and sharp. And also a 3-leveled enamel dial. The dial itself is enamel, and then there are 2 layers of print, the numerals denoting the hours, and then the subdial print, I think, is the 3rd layer. So that's very, very nice.
Yeah, what's really impressive about that, in the presentation they were saying about how those are separate pieces. So you actually have, with an enamel dial, that's where you layer it up with ground glass paste and then you fire it and you build up those layers over time, and you build sort of 5 to 10 layers to get the really fine smoothness and the sheen. And every single time you fire it, you have the opportunity to break it, and they have 3 separate components that come together to make this one dial. So you end up having 30 opportunities to make it fail, and even more than that, the print isn't just printed on top of the enamel, it's done with enameling as well. So you can imagine they get all of the white pieces, components all together, and they do the final firing with the print on it, and then it fails. You've got to throw the whole thing away.
Brown trouser time times 3.
the fable of the 3 brown trousers. Maybe they should learn something from that. Something that is worth pointing out, though, and they were very clear about this in the presentation, they don't make their own hands and dials. They are made to their specification, a very high specification, but they are not made by Lange Söhne. They focus on cases and movements and things like that.
Outsource the stress, fair enough.
Yeah.
And this is quite a small watch as well, so it's 39 millimeters in diameter and 9.7 millimeters tall, which is quite impressive for such a grand complication as a minute repeater.
Yeah.
And the case is in platinum as well, which is a bit unusual for a minute repeater because of its chimeness resistance.
Its resonation.
Yeah. Now, I'm sure that there are some very, very clever people at Lange with degrees in metallurgy and alchemy and all sorts. But yeah, from what I understand it, I don't think platinum's the go-to metal for a minute repeater.
No, I mean, I'm no expert on minute repeaters, having only handled a few and owned precisely 0 due to various budgetary concerns I have. But yeah, I can imagine the Lange team all in white lab coats standing around with stethoscopes going, shh.
That one was definitely louder.
Writing copious notes about it. So this is what I've heard. If you're going to make a minute repeater, you make it from rose gold. Rose gold sounds warm and rich and vibrant. If you make it from yellow gold, it's a similar sort of signature, but less powerful, a little bit quieter, a bit softer. White gold, apparently, and I say this with a straight face, is unpredictable. You don't know what you're going to get. It's going to clang, it's going to clump, it's going to... all of those sorts of things. Who knows? It's the rogue wild card material. Titanium gives you more amplification, but not as pure and rich a tone, maybe a cleaner, crisper tone. And then platinum is right at the bottom of the pile. Platinum is cold and sharp and brittle, supposedly. As far as minute repeater goes, platinum is better suited in a car's catalytic converter than it is in a watch. But Anthony de Haas, the product director, I think at Lange, decided no, they were going to make one from platinum. And I don't know about you, Tom, but it sounded like a minute repeater to me.
Yeah, it sounded great. I mean, what you just described there about metals sounding better than others, such an esoteric knowledge set, isn't it? It's just so strange. I think that's what makes watchmakers that make minute repeaters head and shoulders above the rest, because like, who would know that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it does come into a little bit of the, I wonder how much optical bias there is that changes how people think they're hearing stuff. Because you get the same thing in the hi-fi community. There are some people who go, all amplifiers sound the same, all DACs sound the same, and then other people who say, I can hear what kind of plastic is used in the circuit board of my amplifier.
Yeah. Rose gold is the Stradivarius of metals, in my opinion.
And I have no idea. I imagine there is some truth in both things, and that the differences are slight and almost indistinguishable, but do exist. I don't know. Maybe, dear viewer and listener, if you're someone who is lucky enough to own a trio of the same watch in different materials that have a minute repeater, tell us what your experiences are. Do you hear the difference, or do they all sound the same? In any case, something I have noticed with minute repeaters, especially ones with sapphire casebacks, is often they are quite quiet. But this one, bright, clear, rich in tone, sounded like the perfect ice cream van.
Yeah, really sung out, didn't it? Really bright sounding. Yeah, I don't know how they got it to amplify so well. It's not like when you're trying to listen to music, so you put your phone in your shoe in a hotel room. It sounded really good.
It did sound great, didn't it? And in a quite a big room as well. You know, it wasn't a quiet, enclosed environment. So it's powered by the Caliber L122.1. Why don't you go through some of the specs, Tom?
Yeah, so this is a massive movement in scope. 415 parts.
Wow. In that 39mm by 9.7mm case, that is crazy.
39 rubies, I believe there were. A lot of them gold chamfered, so it looked really, really nice as well. Not only does it sound great, it also looks amazing. There are 191 parts just for the minute Peter alone, and it's all immaculately finished to the highest standard for this piece.
Yeah.
Obviously, there are only 50, so they've really gone to town with it. So, yeah, incredible.
We saw pictures of the dial side, which is the most complicated part. In fact, what you see through the back isn't anywhere near as interesting.
Yeah.
And it's all just finished to the most insane level for no one to ever see, except the watchmaker.
Yeah.
He's just doing it for his own lols, really.
Yeah. And 72 hours of power reserve, which is pretty cool.
That's really good, yeah. Good 3 days there.
And another unique thing about it was they'd made effort to tune it so that it skipped the gap between the hour chimes and the quarter chimes, I believe.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
So usually you'd be kind of hanging on in very tense anticipation to find out what the time was. But this one just plays it all out in one big go, which is really cool, really nice.
So usually with a minute repeater, there's 3 sets of chimes, isn't there?
Yeah.
There's the hours, quarters and minutes. And there's 2 hammers for that, the high and the low, and they go 1 for the hours, 1 for the minutes, and the quarters are the combination. But here what we're saying is that on a lot of minute repeaters, if say it was 1:47, it would go ding, 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 and you're there going, yeah, come on. The boss has asked me what the time is, and I need to tell him, hurry up. Whereas here it will go straight from the first hour chime straight into the quarters without pause, which again, considering the size of the watch, is an amazing additional function that probably people wouldn't notice. It's one of those nice to haves that when you have it, you wouldn't notice it until you've missed it, like heated seats in a car.
Sure.
But generally what impressed me about this watch, so we were there, we went to a few different places, and when it's the very complicated, very expensive watches, this one is very expensive, they would be like, oh, handle it with gloves, be very careful, don't touch it, let me do it, oh, careful, oh, what are you doing, put it down, what are you doing over there, come back with that. Here, Anthony de Haas said, there you go, handed it out, pass it around, play with it. have fun.
He did, yeah. He was like, these are toys. Yeah, let's have fun. Yeah.
Yeah, which was amazing. Completely different attitude. And I don't think his confidence was misplaced, because he went through some of the details about this movement and this watch that make it actually a rugged, dare I say it, daily wear. You could genuinely have this watch in rotation with those 3 days of power reserve. From the security mechanism, which you reminded me of, Tom.
Right.
If you have the crown pulled, you can't set the minute repeater off, and vice versa. You can't break it. Minute repeaters are usually very, very delicate. Like these things are. No one movement is alike. Each one has to be carefully sanded away to get the right sound and the right function by the watchmaker. It's not just an assembly job. They have to properly fine-tune it. Otherwise, 1, it sounds crap, and 2, it jams.
Sure.
So usually with a minute repeater, it's like, careful, wait until this happens. Don't wind it backwards. Don't do this. This thing, you can't break it. I mean, you can, but you can't break it within reasonable use. It's protected from that. It has ruby bearings on the racks, so they don't flap around and break. They run on the underside of the racks, just these little details, just to create that extra security in its wearability. And I think my favourite spec that he threw in there was the 20 metres of water resistance, which is obviously very hard to achieve with the slide, but I could just imagine washing up with this thing on my wrist and it just being like, yeah, that's fine.
I mean, 20 metres sounds like a meagre amount, really, when we're talking, about watches. You can't really go very far with that. But I like that because it's really impressive, like you say, for a minute repeater, because when you think of water resistance, you think of, something being locked up tight that, no water can enter it. And that's not very good when you're trying to resonate sound from within it. So I thought that was amazing.
Yeah.
It's really funny, isn't it, that how Anthony DeHaas is at Watches and Wonders, the appointments were touch and feel sessions where you got hands on with the watches. Yeah. And he was like, this is touch and feel. I'm a crazy Dutchman. And I can imagine that the rugged nature of our Lange watches recently is kind of down to him, because the watchmakers are kind of like, this crazy Dutchman, he keeps breaking all our watches. We need to make them stronger.
He was an absolute character. I'd love to talk about that, but I think what is better to do, let's get him in for an interview. We need to show his character on this on an episode and let people experience it for themselves.
That'd be great.
Because he's truly one of the characters of watchmaking.
Hello!
Well, there you have it, everybody. That is our due diligence done. We have made amends. We have spoken to you about the Richard Lange minute repeater, and I'm so glad we did, because going back to the memories of that experience were just fantastic. So if there are any other watches as well, dear viewer and listener, that we have forgotten that you think we should be talking about, let us know in the comments below. And until then, I'm going to carry on reminiscing on the good times of Watches and Wonders. Bye-bye.
Bye.